but we know we should be building a statement that's a vision of a graduate. What is it a student has? What is their toolbox? And that toolbox could be skills, could be dispositions. I see it very much linked to what we just heard about in terms of what we bring to students and what they bring out into the world. And to really try to get the juices flowing for us about this, we decided the idea was to bring back some students who just recently were in our seats in our classrooms, and to give us some input around this, to get us thinking about what do students need for the world that's next. Right? So that's an interesting job, and we have a group of students here who are going to help us with that. Before I ask you to introduce yourself, just a couple things with the logistics, okay? We ask that you slow the pace just a smidge in terms of when you're speaking, because we have an interpreter service that's happening here. We read it through the screen, the dome that's here on the table, and maybe Leticia, at the end, maybe you're going to have to sneak in a smidge also to be heard there, okay? So what I would ask to do when we start, we have a couple of questions to guide the conversation, but we purposely did not make it perfectly framed, because questions will come up. Questions from all of us, we'll do that the same way as well. You would come up here near the dome and ask your question, and then we can respond to the whole group, okay? So why don't we start by having the alum introduce themselves, your year of graduation, and then what are you up to now?
Awesome. So, hello everyone. My name is Montana Bailey. I attend the University of Vermont. I am a third-year student studying community and international development, which really boiled down as economics and diplomacy. I'm actually graduating this spring with my bachelor's degree in that subject, and I'm doing an accelerated master's program in community development and applied economics, and I will be graduating next spring with that degree.
I'm Ruby Warner. I graduated here in 2020. I go to Middlebury College. I'm a junior. My major is molecular biology and biochemistry, and my minor in computer science. Hi everyone. My name is Jenna Al-Hasham. I go to Tulane University in New Orleans, and I'm studying biomedical engineering. And my year of graduation from here was 2022.
I graduated the year 2021, and right now I'm at the University of Tampa studying sports management.
Hi, I'm Kate Kennard. I graduated in 2022 from Nauset. I'm at the University of Georgia, and I'm an exercise science major, and I hope to be a physical therapist eventually.
Hi, I'm Leticia Silva, and I graduated in 2022, and I go to Bryant University, and I study marketing and management leadership.
So while we don't need to go right down the line, in any real formal fashion, we can kind of bounce in and out with sharing what's on your minds. One of the areas we wanted to spend a minute talking about is, as a Nauset graduate, what are the tools that you gain here that are now serving you well? Maybe if there's one or two in particular that you think we really did. Those tools are sharp, and now things are working for you because of that. Okay? So I don't know who wants to start off, who wants to throw something out about that, and then we'll ping pong back and forth to get people's thoughts.
Just remember to say your name first.
Oh, thank you. I can tell you when to start, Jenna. You can do that contact.
Okay. My name is Jenna, and one thing that I would definitely say is that, at least in Tulane, I can't speak for all schools, there's definitely a variety of teacher-student connections. And some teachers you're going to form great connections to, and you're going to know them well, and they're going to be a resource for you. And some teachers, you really just got to make it through. And I hate to say that, not anybody in the room, not pointing fingers. Sometimes that's how it is, how it is at Nauset. And you just really got to make it through the term, but you always have those core teachers that you can return to, and they're a safe space for you. And I think that once you go to college, if you have that base of learning how to connect with someone like that, it really helps out because it adds another resource onto your plate when you're in a huge school like that.
My name is Will, and one thing that definitely I learned here was that expanding your palette in a way, taking classes that you wouldn't think you would be wanting to take. Like I took EARN, which I loved. I took video tech, and that's really honest to God what I want to do when I'm done. I want to work on TV and other things like that. So definitely expanding your palette, just bringing variety to it definitely helps. Please.
My name is Montana, and I think what I found most helpful from my experience in Nauset is having presentations and discussion style classes. I think that, yes, as a student, lectures are predominant in a college setting. However, I think critical thinking really rises when you're having those conversations where you need an understanding of the topic to really speak on it and have an opinion on it. And I think that those style conversations that we had here at Nauset and being able to present on certain topics allowed me to be a critical thinker and have a greater understanding of complex topics that I'm studying at university.
I'm Letizia, and Brian is a big project-oriented school, project and teamwork-oriented school, and I think that doing a lot of presentations at Nauset and constantly doing working with other people really helped me build connections with other people and create teams in college.
Hi, I'm Kate, and I think kind of going along with what everyone's saying is Nauset did a good job at building relationships with people, whether it's with teachers or other students. I just feel like Nauset has a lot of opportunities where you can get involved with groups, whether it's sports or clubs. I think Nauset has different opportunities to be able to communicate and build relationships with people.
I'm Ruby, and I think that one tool that was really helpful for going with Middlebury was time management, because there's a lot of classes that at Middlebury that are really rigorous, and you're given a lot of work, and you have to kind of sort through what really needs to be done and what can be pushed to later, and you have to really manage your time on getting those big assignments done, because there's not a lot of them. You have to really focus on specific ones, and I think a lot of classes that I took here at Nauset definitely were rigorous, but they also kind of showed me how to separate the work and really plan out what I need to get done when, and that was really helpful for me.
Okay, again, this isn't really a tool, but I really like how Nauset has that A and B schedule. I think it really prepared me well for college, because in college we have classes every other day too, pretty much, and I just think Nauset has a good schedule with that, and it made me more prepared for college in that way.
Is everyone an on-day, off-day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday kind of schedule?
Yeah.
Now, in terms of the flow of this, we're formal, but we're not too formal. So if something comes up from one of the questions and people feel that you have something you want to ask that piggybacks right on what just happened, just come up and we can kind of insert people as we go along, right? Don't feel like we have to wait just to the end. We want to make sure we build the perspective hearing this, like, okay, something's on my mind now, or something you want to think about, okay? So, so in terms of what do you wish you learned, or you had a little more practice doing in high school that you think would have prepared you even more so for what you're doing now? Is there any, what's in that category?
Yeah. I think the largest learning curve I found at college was exposure to research papers and research. I was really unfamiliar with Google Scholar and Web of Science, and I find that to be where I spend most of my time. And in terms of citations and everything, I definitely had exposure to that, but really learning how to digest research in a variety of subjects and what to look for, what each section means, and the discrepancies in it all. I think I had some exposure in my science classes, but I'm really using research throughout all my different disciplines that I'm studying. And so I think that if I had been exposed to that earlier on, I would have been able to avoid a lot of the learning curve that I experienced that my peers had already been exposed to in high school. So I think that was a really big difficulty for me, and I'm when I tell you I probably spend a minimum of 20 hours on research papers a week, that is an understatement. So I think that, and I can speak for some of my friends at least at my university, that is heavily research-based, that exposure to research early on, even in projects where rather than just going to Google for sources, maybe directing your students towards different research search engines would be helpful in exposing them to that material earlier on.
And are you provided does someone rank the quality of the research engines you guys are using? Do you have professors or advisors who tip you off to get you moving in the right direction? Or a professor will flat out give that to you so you are moving in the right direction? Or is the hunt part of the task?
It's Jenna. I would say that I have a lot of different classes where sometimes they really couldn't care less what you use, but some of my specific classes, you were definitely graded on the types of resources that you used. For example, one time I had to make an annotated bibliography, and you had to pick 10 resources that were peer reviewed, and I had no idea what peer reviewed meant. I had no idea where to find that. So definitely like exposure to different resources and different websites that you should use, that would be helpful.
Any thoughts on that one in terms of professors guiding you in the right direction or TA getting you going in the right direction?
Hi, I'm Kate. I know like for my biology lab this semester, my TA had us use the university like library, so we would have to go online and find peer-reviewed research like articles that someone else had written and use those for our research papers. So I was pointed in the direction, and that's like one of the only classes that I've had to do a research paper so far. But so I was like guided to use a specific website.
Anyone else on that one?
Yeah, I kind of did have my teacher provided us with a source engine also for research papers, and I haven't really had to write any so far except for one. But yeah, I think that if I had been exposed to it in high school, I think it would have been like a little more helpful to kind of have the knowledge that's over it.
Yeah, just a quick thing again, when I was like writing my first research paper, I had to literally look up on YouTube how to write a research paper because I had never done it. So that was definitely something I had never done, like a full research paper before.
Pat?
Please.
Thank you guys all for coming. It's really great to see you all. It's really wonderful to see you. Thank you for your efforts. I have a question about this.
Can you come around because the
Oh, I'm sorry.
dome is
Sure.
now up.
Yeah.
When you come up, if you folks could stand down in this area near the chair, the dome that's picking this up is up on this table now, okay?
My name is Lisa Brown. I teach Exploring Respected Humans. My question to you is, when I'm hearing about maybe a little bit of a deficit around knowing how to write a peer research paper or reviewed paper, do you feel like that could have been something in library sciences here at Nauset that could have been enhanced? Or where do you think you could have gotten that knowledge from?
Go ahead.
Yeah, hi, my name is Montana, and I think that it could have either been in library sciences or really simply provided as a source for papers that I was already writing in high school. So I think that I was going to Google for a lot in like basic search engines, but rather than viewing that as a resource, going a little bit further and having those research papers and knowing how to digest them would have simply taken my work here at Nauset a step further and then given me that foundation that I needed. So I think really in any class, whether that's political theory in a history class or a scientific research paper in a science class, I think that it could be applied as a resource in all different disciplines at Nauset.
I'm Ruby. I agree. I think that we did spend a lot of time in the classes here looking at like what websites are good and like what articles that we can use and what we shouldn't, like for bias and all of that, and digesting those. And I think like in all of my classes across the curriculum, and I think that could be expanded to searching for research articles as well as just like websites, and that would be really helpful to know that we had that like additional resources for to use in the papers all across.
Thank you. Anyone else on? Please, John.
I think also another thing that I've learned writing research papers and just papers in general is that sometimes there's so much to sift through in a website. You have to learn how to read a website and how to just do research. I didn't know that sometimes all you need to read is the abstract on a website. I didn't know that you have to look at the sources, look at who's writing it, look at their background. Like, I was completely new to all of that. Like you guys said, I would just look up Google, find a few bullet points, and add them in. So I was kind of unfamiliar with how to do research in general. And on top of that, I was unfamiliar with how to do studying, because that was another thing that I was super unfamiliar with, and we didn't get a lot of experience with that. We know that we had to do it, but we didn't know how.
So, other comments, please?
I was gonna say, definitely studying. I feel like here we don't really tack on it that much. It's just kind of study the material, and then we'll see you on Wednesday or whatever. I feel like a lot of kids, especially me, like when I got to college, it was kind of, I didn't really know what I was doing when it came to studying. So I would just kind of sit down and I'd sift through all my notes and then just be like, all right, I'm done. And then one of my teachers actually sat me down one day because he noticed that I was struggling in my class, and he kind of went through it with me on how to study the right way, what to look for, and certainly like look at the bullet and look at this, look at that. And it definitely helped a lot. So I feel like definitely that would just be a big thing to just tack on a little more.
I'm Alicia. Again, yeah, kind of going off of that, like, even though this is no one's favorite thing to do, but like test taking, like, so many of my classes were so, like, all like the grades and stuff that were in like our grade book was all just tests and quizzes, and I feel like I was really like affected by that because I didn't know how to study and I didn't know how to like tackle the work that I needed to like understand. And yeah, I feel like that could be something that could.
I'm Kate, and on the studying topic, I remember one specific teacher here at Nauset that like gave us a lesson on how to study for midterms and finals, and I found that really helpful. But other than that, there was no instruction on like how long to spend studying, what to study. And in college, like as a first-year freshman, I was struggling with how to study for classes at the beginning of the year, and then once I figured it out, it was fine. But I didn't really know like what to study and how long to study before. So,
Jen, please.
I would also say that going to college, there's all different types of people that have completely different, study techniques and ways their brain work. Like, for me, I cannot sit down for more than 2 hours a day. I will hit my limit, I will not retain anything, and it's just not worth it. I have some friends that will not get up for 15 hours straight, and that does not work for me. I don't think that works for a lot of people. So I think that also on top of just learning how to study, it's learning how to study for you and learning what type of brain you have, because that can affect a lot. A lot of people are visual learners or audio learners, like you don't really know, and you have to kind of figure that out, because I think that helps you a lot in the future.
Hi, this is Montana, and I think a lot of my studying at Nauset, I studied a lot, but it was very memorization based. I wasn't really having a great understanding or grasp for what I was really studying, and I wouldn't go very in depth. I'd have my flashcards, I'd have the definition on the back, I'd memorize what that was, and I'd get a good grade on the test because the questions were based on what I was supposed to memorize. And I think that study habit is not something I continued in college. The exams that I have had are based on in-depth understanding of topics, and memorization is only going to get you so far. And that's not only in my humanities classes, but also in my hard sciences. So I think that encouraging students to have collaborative study environments where they're able to discuss topics has proved really helpful for me in college. And diverting questions and exam styles from memorization-based to in-depth understanding, I think, would be helpful in promoting study habits that encourage students to understand what they're learning rather than memorize what they're learning.
So, not on this sheet, but just one question then. So, probably about 20 years ago, 25 years ago, right, the research came out that we all became aware of that, in high schools, we were getting pretty good at filling your sponge to a degree, and then telling you the point on the calendar where you could squeeze the sponge out and get rid of that content knowledge and then go on to the next thing. And we were kind of training you to do that. That's how we were educating people. And the question is, to what degree do we still do that? And how do we do something? I mean, what I'm hearing is something a little different needs to happen. And obviously that, goes all the way back to, some of the criticisms around 2000, where we're giving them the content and you're hanging on to it for a mid-year or a final. It's important because it's on the test. Well, we made up the test. So the question is, do we have to find some kind of balance with that, or where do we need to go with that in terms of the study skills and then the long-term content understanding, particularly if you're going to become the majors and then employed because of those skills and that content. So I don't know, not on the list, but just my follow-up question, please.
I would say that it's not specific to Nauset either, because at least with my major, all of the classes I'm taking right now are prerequisites. A lot of the stuff I'm just trying to get through. I know I'm not really going to remember it, and that's okay. But in high school, I feel like when you're first being exposed to whatever it is, like algebra, to biology, stuff like that, that's the stuff you do want to retain, because once you see it again in college, sure you can forget about it, but you want to be familiar with it. So I think that just in high school, having an understanding of what is really important and what is basic information that you're going to build off of, and what is sort of like, you can memorize this, you can pass the test, and then you can let it go. I feel like that's also important to sit through so that you don't get overwhelmed, but you still end up learning what you really do need to retain and build off of.
Other thoughts on it?
Something that I found really helpful with my classes as I get beyond the prerequisites and are forced to use what I learned in those classes in my harder ones and that are more specific, and is that like drawing that basic knowledge and putting it all together to like apply it to bigger topics, and then also like more challenging questions where I have to really think about what parts are in, like what different parts I need to know in order to come to a conclusion about something that I may ask. I'm like right now I'm really specifically thinking about ISTEM classes and like how like chemistry and biology, all those basic intro courses, you do need to know them, and it is helpful to have see them in high school and then take the intro course in college. But then once you get beyond those, it shows up everywhere, even in like underlying questions, and it's really important to know that. And it's helpful to, once you have that foundation, to then apply it to the bigger concepts that are really complex.
Other thoughts on that one? Does anyone else? Okay, please.
Kate, I do think that Nauset did a good job at providing like the basic biology and like algebra foundation, just because that's my major, so that's the courses that I'm in. And I do think that Nauset did a good job at like providing me with that information, but I don't know if students like at Nauset or at all students at Nauset understand the importance of understanding that and like really having a strong foundation with like algebra and like the simple biology concepts that will come up again. So I think if we just emphasize that this is important and you should really try to understand this instead of just like memorizing it for the test, I think that would be helpful. But like as a student, I did remember that, so it's been helpful. But if we just emphasize that that's important, I think that could be better.
Thank you.
I'm going to piggyback off that. It's definitely a mindset. A lot of kids here that I was with in high school, a lot of them didn't really have the mindset of just keep this baseline knowledge because I'm going to get it down the line, because a lot of them thought that they already had it figured out from sophomore year on. But like Kate said, it's just certain people kind of keep that baseline knowledge and they understand the importance of it. And I feel like definitely pushing that more, the importance of that baseline knowledge, math, science, all the other history, all that stuff. It's definitely way more important than I guess people make it seem. So definitely pushing it a little bit more would definitely be very helpful.
It's Montana, and I think what I found most helpful at Nauset to push me past just memorizing something and then break that down in an exam and moving on was discussions or presentations or papers where I had to compare what I was learning to a previous unit, or understanding the continuity and change and relating back to previous units. And I did have an experience with that at Nauset in sub-subjects, and I found that to be helpful to, and I'm finding that I retained that information the most in my studies.
Yeah, come on, please.
Jody Birchall. I'm listening to all of you, the familiar thread of memorizing information, finite information, and then going to college and taking a more holistic approach to learning. Do you think the way that we test at Nauset when it comes to standardized testing, multiple choices versus a more conceptual, narrative type of showing me what it is that you actually know instead of being able to figure out when something's laid out in front of you what the correct response is, and preparing for a more conceptual approach of holistic learning could be helpful when you go to college versus keeping things so finite?
Yeah, it's Montana, and I think you're hitting the nail on the head there. My degree is extremely interdisciplinary, and I think that when you standardize an exam like that, I understand that teachers have so much grading to do, and it's going to be easier to scan a Scantron than read several different essays, and I totally understand that. But I do have to say that as a student, you find your own voice and passion for subjects, not for a standardized test. You're going to find that through projects and presentations and papers and discussions and things along those lines. And I felt stunted at Nauset and put almost into a pipeline of certain subjects that I was passionate towards because there wasn't the different project or assignment styles that really fostered an interest or passion for multiple different areas of study. When I look back at high school and I think of my peers, I think of them and I associate them with a specific subject that they were good at. And I was actually just having a discussion with some of my friends about this, about how at Nauset, when a student excels at a certain subject, that's highlighted more than encouraging that student to challenge themselves in subjects that they may not be as good at to provide a holistic education. I think of myself, I was not good at math, and I prioritized my studies and things that I was passionate about, which is important, but I wish I had that understanding and that background because all I do is calculus in my economics classes. So, yeah.
Was there any other response to Jody's question, please?
The only thing that I would say is I definitely agree with Montana, but at least in college, I have several different friends that are in the same classes as me that have different teachers, so they're provided with different tests, and some of them are noticeably, definitely harder than some of the other classes. So I do think that Nauset did an okay job with kind of trying to match the difficulty level between different classes. But I also think that maybe more communication within different programs and different classes would be helpful because sometimes you're just going to be dealt a really difficult card and you're going to have a really hard class, whereas sometimes maybe your test is going to be easier. And that's no fault to anyone, but I wouldn't say go towards standardized testing. I would just say maybe try and collaborate a little bit more so that they're more equal and more fair between classes.
One thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, and anyone who wants to come up and speak to it, please do, but one thing we're always trying to figure out in high school is how to have a common high-quality product and then still make sure people have the flexibility to bring the personality and the zest, the energy that they bring in their classroom. There's always this medium point in that. I think, I don't know, throughout my career, I think we're always trying to figure out how to hit that. So yeah, I think you're right on. We want to make sure that the challenge is the right level of challenge, the content is consistent, but each person here can bring their training and their personality to it in a fashion that highlights those things. So yeah, I guess that's, all right, just talking out loud, just trying to make sense of it myself. So please, come on up.
This is Deb. I think I'm going to try to ask this question. I don't know if I'm going to make any sense. But anyway, one of the things that as a teacher, I have struggled with is balancing the content with the quality. Does that make sense? So, sifting through the myriad of things that you could teach in a foreign language or Chinese, back in so I choose what clear things that are important. And then in order for me to teach you study skills, I think it should be a separate class, separate. So do as a student going into college between the content that we teach you, the time that we take to teach you that content, because if you rush through it, you're not going to know it. It's going to go out. And what is the right balance? Does that make sense? Is that a good question? Yeah, okay, thanks.
Okay, we start, Kate, start on that one.
I'm Kate, and I think that to like have a good balance, I think like in some of my classes in college right now, they are still like just multiple choice, like kind of memorization things, but then also there's like an aspect of it that's more like applying concepts. And I think that in high school, most of my classes, we would have like 5 tests and then like 1 project, and maybe if we balance it out more and had like 3 tests and 3 projects, that would be a way to like retain some information better, but also still keep that like multiple choice, kind of just memorizing things, because I do think that I have used that in college in some of my classes, but I'm sure as I go into more of my major ones, I'll use less of that, but still just like to have that ability to do both, like memorizing and applying, I think it's still good.
To answer your question a little bit, I think that that's not what you want to hear, but there's no balance. Because some kids just need more time, and some kids don't need as much time. And some kids are going to feel like, wow, this class is taking forever. And some kids are like, wait, what's going on? I missed that. And so it's really, really hard to find a balance. I think that just as long as the majority of the class is retaining the information, and you can sort of notice that, then I would say it's just variable. Another thing that I would say is this year I have an assistant professor, which going into it I was definitely nervous about because it's her first semester teaching and she has very little experience. But I'm so thankful that I had her, and I'm so thankful that a lot of times when you see the kids are struggling and you're like, I'll just give them the same test anyway and see how well they do, that sets everyone back. I think that makes you as a teacher feel like kids aren't quite getting it, and kids feel like they're behind too. So I think that if you sort of start from where the kids are at, that's helpful for everyone too.
This is Montana, and I think you're right. I think that quality over quantity does need to be highlighted. In terms of the proportions to that, I think it's specific to the course that's being taught. I know in AP classes, you have to hit a certain amount of curriculum, and I think that it's going to vary based on what level is being taught, the students that comprise the class. But I do have to agree that if the speed at which the content is being taught is too fast and students aren't retaining things, the quality of the content should be focused more than the quantity that is being taught. But at least with my experience at Nauset, other than in AP classes where you have to meet a certain content level, that was something that I found being practiced, because at least in my classes, students were voicing that it was going too fast. And I think that if you create an environment where students are comfortable in expressing that they don't feel comfortable with the pace of the class, that's really what you need. And if students can communicate that they aren't retaining anything, or you can see signs of that, and you're able to slow down your curriculum, I would recommend that, just because I think the quality of the content is ultimately what's going to be important, because that is what is going to allow your students to retain the information. If you go too fast and they don't retain anything, then what is the point in teaching that subject?
Please, Ruby.
I'm Ruby. I agree with what everyone's been saying. I think it really depends on what your class is made up of, and it varies from class to class. And something that I found really helpful that some of my professors have done is done like a mid-semester check-in, and kind of just they send out an anonymous survey to us and just said like, what can we improve? What have I been doing well? What needs to change? And like, how can I help you more? And that has really helped, because they read all that feedback, and then I've noticed that they've changed that to what they've been saying. It makes like the rest of the semester really well. So I think that's really good.
I feel like it also I feel like it also like kind of depends on like what you're doing in that class too. Like I'm a very like hands-on I feel like doing more like, maybe teaching in different like formats, like kind of what they said too, like teaching different formats, like not just like lectures, but like kind of doing like activities and like maybe projects and presentations. Like I feel like that can kind of like also expand the variety of like what you're retaining and what you're doing.
Yeah, piggybacking off what Luke said, at UT, like midway through every semester, it's mandatory for every teacher to send out one of those surveys, you know, how are you doing, how's the speed, how's this, how's that, and it honestly saved me 2 of my classes this semester. Like, it was awesome, the fact that they would take their time to ask me, just like, all right, we're halfway through, we're almost done, we're halfway there, here it is, done. And it, like I said, it saved my grade in 2 of my classes, and it was just really helpful to have that. It really saved me, so definitely being able to just feel how they're feeling is definitely a big thing, so.
Well, we just had a workshop this morning that focused on the idea of belonging, and that being the key ingredient. So I didn't pay any of these people to say these things. It fits perfectly in terms of if you feel that you're engaged and you can speak up and that you're being honest, like human-to-human dialogue about things, then the achievement happens after that, right? We spent the earlier part of the time talking about that. Okay? Please, John.
I would also say that, at least for me, and I feel like a lot of other people, when you go to college, the classes are substantially bigger. So if you're not familiar with the student-to-teacher connection, or if it's still difficult for you to feel like you can reach out to a teacher and say, hey, I'm confused, or hey, this is going too fast, there's no way that when you add 100, 200, 300 kids to a class, you're going to feel more comfortable. So I think that also just creating that sort of funnel of feedback and being very open to it and responsive to it is super helpful for kids to learn that if it's going too fast, there's other kids that feel that way. And it's okay to say that, and hopefully the teacher will respond to that and try to suit your needs. At least in my calculus class, I know that at least half the kids had taken calculus before, so they were doing okay. The other half of the kids were taking calculus, and that's my class. So I would say that just being responsive to the kids and understanding what they need, and definitely being receptive to that information to try and suit what everyone is asking for is helpful.
Karen, one down? Yep. Anyone who has a question, just kind of queue up over here, over the side of the room.
Hey, friends. Hi, Karen Hempstall. So, I don't know if this is on your list of to-dos, but first, question. As much as I appreciate talking to collegiate level, are we going to get a panel of non-collegiate kids that graduated from Nauset? Because I would like to know their perspective as well.
Okay. So the start of this, over the course of the winter and the spring, and probably into next school year, we need to figure out how to use different formats to gain some of it's data, some of it's bringing people in. But for sure, yeah, today's a kickoff, but we'll go from there.
Cool. Okay, so I heard help with organizational skills, time management, and study skills. I'd like to know about note-taking, whether or not Nauset did a good, bad, or otherwise job, or what you feel like you needed better for note-taking, because I feel like that's always a struggle for me in my class. Second, what life skills were you missing when you left Nauset to go to college? And I appreciate that doing laundry and like saving money for Friday is like important. But like what did you feel like, oh, I only took a class in blah, I would have had a better freshman year, or whatever. Okay, right, so note-taking, life skills.
For me, this is Leticia. For me, note-taking, in my calculus class this year, she made like a packet and we kind of like went and like, it was like kind of blank, but there were like questions, so she went through it all with us and like we like took notes on what she was talking about and everything. But like, I feel like kind of like a structured
just look at the information and write it down. But one thing that I felt was super helpful, and it's sort of S, is if the teacher is taking notes as you are taking notes. Some teachers would like project their papers and they would take their notes, and you could see how they organized it, where they wrote something in red and gold that was super important, where they started something, where they didn't. And I think that having the opportunity to watch a teacher in real time, so you were reading it as well as listening to it, as well as writing it at the same time, was super helpful, because you could just see what you had to be doing and what was more important than the other.
Other thoughts? T-shirt, okay.
Yeah, kind of what Jenna said, that is like kind of what I was heading towards. But, yeah, going and taking notes with the professor and like watching them do it is so important. It's like, if you have any questions, like you can really like, point out like what you're confused about and they know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, obviously you can't really like do that in every single subject. It's so difficult to. But like, instead of just like math or like science, like that's so helpful.
I was just gonna say that pretty much when I was here, it was just, they would put on a slide, write down the notes and then just study it. In college, definitely, I had 2 professors this semester that would write down exactly, they would tell you exactly what to write down. They would highlight it, so some stuff would be in black lettering and some stuff would be, yellow highlight. Write this down, you need to know this, you'll be tested on this. So definitely just kind of distinguishing the fact between, like, this is just information and this is like, know this is definitely a big thing.
Kate, please.
It's Kate. I've also found that some of my professors, they'll just stand there and talk. There's no visuals, no nothing. And I know that's not like the best way to teach people at all, but if some teachers in high school could provide like a visual, but then also base some of their like teaching just on talking, it would give students a way to learn how to just listen to someone talk and take notes, because I know that's really challenging to do in college if someone's just standing up there and have to learn to just listen and take the notes. And I feel like in high school that's not something that happened, and that would just give me a foundation to be able to do better at that in college.
It's really, and I think that something that has been really helpful that I've found some of my professors have done is give a list of objectives for that lecture or that class of what they're going to cover, no matter what kind of presentation they're giving, because also everyone like takes notes differently and it depends on what kind of student you are. So like I like seeing a presentation just copying it down because I can learn it a lot better if I just write it down, but other people are much more visual and it really depends on the person. But having that list of objectives to be able to look back and say, do I know how to do each like bullet point from this class? And if I don't, I can go to the professor and ask them more questions about that. And just that way you know what they want you to know and you can test yourself and see, did I learn this from the class?
Hi, this is Ellen Dill. So I do give essential questions and objectives at the start on the screen on the slide. Does your professor then instruct you to write those objectives down and that's what's helpful, or you just see them and you write them down?
Usually we'll get the presentation after, so like if I missed anything in the notes, we will look back on that and it'll have the questions or objectives there. And just somewhere where they can access it at any time after the lecture.
Other thoughts on that? Please, Kate.
So something about like giving students objectives and then giving them a note slide after. It's all about like discipline, which is like a life skill that I feel like could have been more helpful, is having the discipline to go back and like look over those notes, because I know sometimes like the professor will give me the notes and then I don't go back and look at them. I'm like, oh, I'll go back next week, but I never do. But other times I do. But the discipline to be able to go back and look at those notes and know that even though the professor's giving you the information, you can have access to it whenever, having the discipline to go and look at it and learn the information would be helpful.
I also know that this isn't super accessible for every teacher, and it's not easy to do, but almost all of my classes are recorded on Zoom, and if a kid misses a day, if so-and-so happens, it's posted on their website or whatever, and you can just go back and watch the lecture. So it saves the kid time, it saves the teacher time. And again, I know that that's not super easy for everyone to do, but that was something that was super helpful, whether or not I would rewatch the lecture. It was always available to me. And all of our other classes, if there was one teacher that taught it in a specific way that you preferred than maybe your teacher, you could watch their lecture. And so you had different resources if you learned a certain way.
Yeah, directing the conversation a little bit more towards Ms. Hepp's second question regarding life skills and to your previous comment, based on my opinion of my experience at Nauset, I think there's a culture here that fosters people moving towards higher education and going to a collegiate level, and I find students who don't fall into that category to experience some setbacks and some shame surrounding that. My sister's in that boat right now, and watching her experience compared to mine is very different. I think that a lot of the education here at Nauset is geared towards getting kids to those college experiences, and when I tell you, I have 12 friends who have dropped out of prestigious universities in the last 2 years. I have 12 of my close friends who I was in those honors and AP classes who felt that they weren't ready to go to college or that they don't really know what they want to do and they want professional experience, and the sense of shame and the idea of getting stuck on CAPE is such a ground foundation in the attitudes of Nauset students, and I think that that needs to be addressed. I think that students should be connected to the community networks of professionals that are here on CAPE. I think that there should be some professional development for students where they learn how to make a resume, they learn how to interview, they learn how to write a cover letter, they learn how to experience I think that when students are interested in that, they're funneled to the tech. And I think that rather than funneling all these students to the tech, I think that there should be a culture at Nauset that encourages students to pursue things that they want. I have a friend right now who's working in contracting who's making $80K a year, and I have a friend who's $80,000 in debt who's attending Cornell. So, I mean, I think that, yes, pushing students towards higher education is important because a lot of different professions are requiring those degrees. However, I think that there should be more of a culture that accepts students who maybe don't want to pursue that higher education right now and direct them towards resources that will help them and encourage them to want to stay on CAPE, because as we're seeing, a lot of people are migrating.
Just to kind of piggyback on Montana and stuff, I would also say I agree with the idea of the shame of not pursuing a collegiate level, because I have a friend that I asked a couple days ago to come to this panel, and she didn't go to college. And I was talking to her last week about what she was happy, whether she was glad she didn't go to college, what she was doing, and she sounded so productive, so happy. She was so thankful she didn't go to college. She's still wondering what she wants to do. She's waitressing, but that's fine. You know, she has more time to figure it out. And she was gonna come. She told me last night she was gonna come, and she texted me this morning, and she said, "I'm sorry, I really don't think I have much to say. I didn't go to college." And I think that that also kind of broke my heart, because I picked her because I thought she had so much to say. How did Nauset prepare you for the world? What would you have wished you learned, you know, not going to college, stuff like that. And just in her eyes, it was the complete opposite. So I agree with you saying that, you know, encouraging kids to really pursue whatever they're passionate about, and encouraging kids, even if that's just taking more time to figure out what they're passionate about, I think that's really important.
Thank you. So you saw the questions. So what advice do you have for us as we work to prepare students for their future? And we ask that in, picture there being a statement, a poster, you've been posterized throughout your whole educational careers, the poster of some kind that identifies what we want the graduate to have in terms of their skills, maybe in terms of their disposition, how people, interpersonal skill set, anything maybe that was talked about. So what advice do you have for us as we kind of draft the poster? Please.
Yeah, I think the 2 points that if you were to create this hypothetical poster that should really be highlighted is critical thinking skills and networking. I think those are the 2 skills that I'm utilizing most at college. I think they're the two skills that I'm going to utilize in my professional life. And I think that both critical thinking and the ability to communicate and network with people, whether that's in a corporate environment or simply in a professional environment, those are the two skills that I think should be highlighted in the curriculum here at Nauset and should be the promoting factors for people moving on to either a professional or higher education path.
Other guidance for the poster? Judges?
I would definitely agree, I would definitely agree with the networking aspect of it, because once you're put into college, although it usually is more important to network in college, because that's really where you're going to go forward from, and like find a job, find what you're going to do, I would also say that once you're in college, you're introduced to every type of networking there is. There's sororities, fraternities, pre-professional frats, and then on top of that, there's just all of these professors, all of these study groups, research people. Like there's everything and every opportunity. And if you don't know how to approach something like that, it's really intimidating. So I would say that just introducing kids to the fact that whether it's just a small internship or even just a simple job that you're gonna be interested in, you're gonna work with and pursue in the future, is also really important to just get that sort of introduction to learn how to talk to people, how to network, and how to do something like that.
All right, this is the last one on networking. So my major, sports management, it's all marketing, networking, sorry. It's all in who you know, and like my other professor would say, it's all in who knows you. Pretty much, they tell us they take us out on these little field trips to all the different pro sports teams around here. It's a pretty big sports city right now. And they walk us into the building and they'll make you introduce yourself and, here's my email, here's my school email, here's my number. And they take us to all these different places. It's been so helpful. I've met people that I would never have otherwise met through that. And when I graduate with my degree, it's going to be so helpful having those people coming out. So I'd say definitely here, just like even you guys as networking, like that is so important to some of these kids, especially kids that might not go to college. So definitely just use yourself as like, here's my email when you leave here. Just be a resource to them, definitely.
I have a question.
Oh, sure.
Follow up on that. Hi, this is Abigail. So, one of the things you've also said a number of times has to do with almost if I had known when I was here. And one of the problems is, I feel like I have done some of that, but you don't know that you need to know that. And so when I say it, it kind of falls like, that's my future. How do we communicate how important that is to the students who are here now, so that they get, oh yeah, this is important to me? Thanks.
Thoughts on that, please?
At least for me, I know this isn't a direct answer to your question. Oh, it's Jenna. I would say that just the idea of any kind of syllabus is super helpful. If there's one thing that I will immediately see on the first day, take from the first day, meeting my teachers, whatever it is, it's to look at the syllabus and to be like, okay, this is what I'm going to do, this is what's important, and this is what I need to know. So I think that even though that's only one type of just a little blurb of information that you can take with you, even another small sheet of paper that's like, hey, throughout the year, this is what's going to be important, and this is what you're going to want to retain. So I'll tell you in the future, show up today because it's going to be important. If you're going to listen to something, this was on the paper I showed you at the beginning of the year, I'm telling you again, listen to it again. But I think that just pointing that out, either before class or just in a paper, something you can refer to is super helpful so that you can know and you can be sort of on guard. Like, okay, I should listen. This is going to be something that's going to help me going forward.
I'm Kate, and I think another way to do that would be able to have students who have been in the classes come back and talk to kids, because I think hearing it from someone else in person is just like the best way to really make students understand that it's important. And I know it's hard to find time to have students come in and say that it's important, but I just think that's the best way to actually get people to listen.
And connecting that also to having professionals come in and speaking to people who are in these careers that these students want to pursue, hearing the vocabulary of the things that they're studying currently, I think will promote students to want to retain that information. And also just, I promote this in every aspect, but empowering students, making them feel passionate about what you're passionate about. I think if students feel as if something's achievable for them and that if you're so interested in a subject that they're willing to study that and learn about it, and having an interdisciplinary approach so that it appeals to a wider audience of students, I think is really important, because if students don't care about what they're learning, they're not going to learn it. So I think seeing that you care and creating an environment where they're able to find their passions in the broad subjects that you're studying, and then expanding on that, I think promotes students to want to learn more and retain what they're learning for future use.
Please, John.
It's Jenna. I definitely want to agree with Montana. At least going into engineering, the amount of people that I've met and talked to, I talked to one guy on the plane when I came here. I was waitressing yesterday. I talked to some of my people that were sitting at a table. Everyone has told me, just get through it. They're weeding you out. I know that it's hard. I know they're putting you through this. I did that too. They're just trying to beat you down and weed you out. And at the beginning of the school year, when I was sitting there, I was like, does everyone know what they're doing and not me? And talking to professionals and people that have been through this telling me, just sit tight, you're gonna get there. It's so helpful to know that even though it can feel really tough, knowing that you still want to pursue the end goal is really important, because you can forget what you want to do just feeling so beaten down sometimes. So I think bringing in professionals and having you sort of remember and re-spark that light, that's like, oh yeah, that is really where I want to be, and this is worth it. I think it's really important.
I'll just say, I'll tackle that. I'd say again, it's definitely a mindset. Some kids they don't want to read it. They just have no interest in retaining. But there are those kids that will keep that information, especially if they have someone in their career that they might want to pursue, come in and talk to them. That's going to make them want to keep that information. Obviously, there's always just going to be kids that are just never retaining any of the information. But you can't really, that again, it's just a mindset. So I'd say definitely just not pushing towards those kids that have that mindset of like, I just want to keep it. Definitely try and pull those other kids in. But again, there's only so much you can do with certain kids, just retaining them. So I'd say definitely just try and keep both, but just keep it going.
I also think that there's a lot of pressure to know what you want to do in high school in the future, and I definitely felt that, and I'm figuring out that like maybe what I wanted to do isn't necessarily what I want to do now, and I think it's really important to encourage that, or like emphasize the fact that it's okay not to know what you want to do, but also that it's okay to like try different things and really explore all different careers and like go on adventures and like just really make your own mistakes. And like there's only so much that you can do to prepare people for the world, and there's a lot that they have to figure out for themselves. And I think that it's important to encourage that and support that kind of environment, because that's how they're going to learn. And everyone can learn on their own way, and the only way for them to figure out what they want to do is for them to try and figure it out on their own, and to like create that kind of environment to really support them in figuring out what they want to do, and like showing them that it's okay to make mistakes and really try different things is really helpful.
Well, future looks pretty bright from my seat right over here. Asking, putting casting the net, working through the counselors and other folks who gave some input to have a cross-section of majors and where you are in school, starts us off in a nice way in terms of making that poster. I've simplified what the work is, but you can kind of visualize what that's all about. So first of all, thank you very much. We also, like Karen's question, we also have to talk about, going forward. Won't be planned today, but just put in the back of your mind for now. There will be some follow-up questions about what other kinds of activities do we need to be involved with to help us have the right lenses as we're doing this work around the vision of the graduate, and what should be those common tools, assets, dispositions, skill sets that everybody has when they leave. And not just the students who are at a four-year school. The entrepreneurial spirit on the Cape, as you know, is huge. 80% of our income on Cape Cod is from entrepreneurship. And if you look at a very, very small percentage of students who go off into the military, we have just a couple per year generally. What do they need? And making sure that we're really building this foundation so students go off and can achieve. But we appreciate your candor, first of all. This is, number one, I wildly appreciate the fact that you can wait to speak. Because it's a skill set. As a dad and as a principal, I just don't see with people who are a little younger. So thank you. You all waited and listened to each other. We heard about listening skills today. And second, your candor. This is not the easiest thing, right? We're asking for some feedback and to throw it out there to a group of people. Wait a minute, not too long ago, those folks were judging you A minus, and you're like, ah, minus, I don't know minus. So yes, so to come in and to speak the way that you did and give us the feedback is important, and it's done in a fashion of improvement. And one thing that this group has in common, there is an overarching belief in constant self-improvement, I believe, from every person in this room. And I think that is something that's overarching that makes this place a special place. So thank you for your time, and those of you who are interested in education, you might be looking around at that department head or that teacher hat and saying, maybe I'm going to be a school counselor, maybe I want to shift this, maybe I should go talk to Katie Cameron over there. Or, so as you look around the room, so maybe we'll get you back here someday.